The information discussed in this PILCast episode are merely opinions and do not constitute formal policy or legal guidance of any kind. Hello, and welcome to another PILCast episode, the video blog where we talk about important federal procurement innovation topics in 10 minutes or less. We guarantee it. My name is David Jablonski, and I'm a coach with the DHS Procurement Innovation Lab.
I'm Tracy Harriet. I'm also a coach with the DHS Procurement Innovation Lab.
Hi, everyone. So in this episode, we are going to go in depth on an innovative procurement technique called Group Oral Debriefings. So in this episode, you'll learn how conducting debriefings in a group setting rather than individually can really streamline the debriefing or brief explanation process, while also providing more transparency into how the final award decision was made. Now, at the end of this episode, you will have a new technique that you can apply at any time during the fiscal year, even as you're closing out this current one, fiscal year 2024.
That's right. Throughout this episode, you will hear us talk about the word debriefings, which for all of the procurement professionals out there is specific to certain parts of the FAR. However, this technique can be used in any FAR part to share evaluation information to vendors quickly, whether you have a large or small pool of vendors participating.
That's right. And now, so in most cases, after the government solicitation is completed and awarded, so vendors, they can ask contracting officer for a debriefing. Now, for an example, you may have had a procurement in the past that had a lot of proposals, and that would mean spending a lot of time providing debriefings one-on-one to vendors. But, so there was a team at USCIS, so here at DHS, that found a solution to this, and that's called Group Oral Debriefings.
Right. So this team was planning on issuing multiple task order awards from one solicitation, or what we call a fusion procurement. And they knew they were going to have a lot of competition. They used a 3-phased evaluation approach and received 58 proposals in response to their solicitation.
Whoa, Tracy, that is a lot of vendors. And for me, I have never received 58 vendors, but I can imagine what that would be like giving debriefings one-on-one to vendors. That would have been a lot of time. And I don't know if they would have made it in that week time frame, that 10-day time frame that they have, or 5-day time frame they have to provide debriefings.
That's right. So what this team did after issuing awards, instead of debriefing the unsuccessful vendors one by one, the contracting officer grouped the vendors by each phase of the procurement and held a 1-hour debriefing for each of those groups of vendors. Now, before we jump into this cool story, let's take a look and remind everyone what is required as part of a debriefing.
Here is what's required as part of debriefing itself. So what does the first one say here, Tracy?
So first, the government's evaluation of significant weaknesses or deficiencies.
All right, so second, the overall evaluated cost or price and technical rating of both the successful offerer and the debriefed offerer.
Third, the overall ranking of all offerers, if applicable.
Fourth, a summary of the rationale for award.
If it's a commercial product, the make and model proposed by the awardee.
And sixth, reasonable responses to any relevant questions about whether source selection procedures were followed. So each vendor that requested a debriefing first received a written debriefing to address the vendor's unique feedback to meet the requirements of the FAR that we just shared. Now, in the debriefing letter, vendors were also invited to attend an optional group oral debriefing, where the contracting officer would further address the summary of rationale for the award, as well as any questions about the source selection procedures used.
Now, this team, they had drafted each vendor's written debriefing prior to the award, so they were ready to send out as soon as they were requested. And we recommend doing the same as a best practice for all teams. Now, in your debriefing, we also recommend not just sharing those significant weaknesses or deficiencies, but the entire evaluation report for that vendor. Now, we discussed sharing evaluation documentation as a technique in PILCast episode 20, which we'll link down below so you can check that out.
All right, so how did each of these group oral debriefings work? First, they established their schedule. Now, in this case, they would hold one for each phase of the procurement process for 1 hour each. So if we're counting here, that would be 3 total group oral debriefings that this team was going to hold.
Now next, the contracting officer held dry runs with his technical team and built up a script so that they had a guide for going into these sessions.
Now for the actual group oral debriefing sessions, they did not try to take roll call or record the session itself. The group oral debriefings were optional anyways. Now, if someone asked a question though, it was requested that they share who they are so everyone on the call would know who that question was coming from.
The CO also made the vendors aware that the group oral debriefing would close the debriefing process.
I think that's a really important here to note as well, Tracy. So it closed out that oral debriefing process.
Using the group oral debriefing technique, the government team was able to share point-by-point evaluation with vendors that participated in the solicitation and provide them a forum to ask questions with the government evaluation team to ensure that the process was fair. They were able to have a dialogue with their industry partners. Now, you may be sitting there wondering how the vendors felt about being in a group for this piece of their debriefing, and I would like to let a quote from one of the participants speak for itself. This participant gave us the feedback and said, "We walked away and were like, wow, did that just happen? Did we really have open and honest dialogue? That was so fantastic."
All right, so if you are excited about trying group oral debriefings, just like I am, here are 4 best practices when deciding to use this technique.
First, have a plan of action prior to issuing your award.
All right. Second, have your debriefing letters ready at the time of award. If you need to delay the award just a little bit to make sure everything is in order, definitely do that. This helps vendors get the information they need faster. So see PILCast episode number 2 if you want to hear more about that. Check in the comments down below.
Number 2, that was an early one. Next up, you want to share the full evaluation report with each of the vendors. This is just their individual evaluation report. You do not want to share other vendors' procurement sensitive information.
Our 4th one here, conduct dry runs ahead of time. So this is dry run with the government contracting team, so you can practice for the group oral debriefings and practice answering potential questions ahead of time.
Our last best practice here is to keep those Q&As as part of that oral debriefing session so that you can adequately close the debriefing process.
Wow, these are some really great best practices. So be sure to keep these in mind if you decide to use this technique. Now, if you have used group oral debriefing technique, let us know in the comments section below or send us an email. And if you're out there thinking about using this technique, even for the first time, but would like some assistance, send us an email, pil@hq.dhs.gov, and we would be happy to discuss what you have in mind and share any best practices that we may have as well.
Thank you all so much for joining us on this PILCast episode today. Be sure to like this episode, share it with your friends, hit that notification button, and subscribe to our channel to make sure you get all of our latest videos and updates. We look forward to seeing you on our next PILCast episode. Bye-bye.